Is Dak Prescott a top 10 quarterback in the NFL going into the 2023 season? All that more in this episode of Locked On Cowboys Podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, today we're doing everybody's favorite topic in the NFL circles in July. Where does your favorite quarterback rank, among the rest of the NFL? We are talking Dak Prescott. This was brought up because I saw a list. Not going to say who it was, but from a certain person at CBS Sports made a QB tiers list. Dak Prescott came in at tier 4.
Tier 4.
I'll tell you the tier. I'll just do it right now. Tier 1, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen. Fine. Tier 2, okay. Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, all in tier 2.
What?
Tier 3, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Stafford, Tua, Justin Fields, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, and Daniel Jones in tier 4.
Russell Wilson and Daniel Jones. I mean,
yes. Tier 4, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill, Jimmy Garoppolo, Geno Smith. I want your thoughts. Where approximately, you don't have to give me an exact number, but where in your mind does Dak Prescott rank going into the season?
Tier 2. I think that's pretty clear. Like, he fits right in there with the rest of those guys. Look, I mean, we've been beating a dead horse on a lot of this for a long time, but everyone has spent the entire offseason slandering Dak because of the interception totals, and it's frankly like embarrassing. I don't know, embarrassing for people that are box score scouting constantly. I mean, look, there is a constant. Just to get to this part first. There is a constant need to drive eyeballs to websites, and the Dallas Cowboys do that. Yeah. So the fact that the Dallas Cowboys quarterback led the league in interceptions last year was the biggest boon for the clickbait industry in the history of maybe football. I think that the problem we're having here is that, for Dak, he was trying to do what he could to win the football games, especially at the end of the season. He was trying to do what he could to continue to be aggressive and score points when he needed to be. And I think, a lot of these interceptions, as we've, talked about over and over again, have come from, deflections and situations where Dak was forced to throw into a tight window in order to make a play happen. And we think that a lot of that is going to be mitigated by the change in the personnel that they have. And I think a lot of that stuff, kind of dictates quarterback play as well. But I just have a really hard time for believing, that folks look at the body of Dak Prescott's work and view last season as like the standard for what he plays. Like, I mean, it clearly was the exception to the rule. And again, I don't think that his level of play was poor. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I think that the interceptions are a result of a quarterback desperately trying to do whatever he can to win football games. And so I just, I think people are looking at the interception totals, and that's the summation of who Dak Prescott is. And they basically have been assigning him into tiers based on that, while, being very comprehensive with the rest of these players and being like, oh, well, I can excuse this here. Or
there's no better example than, do you know who led the NFL in interceptions during the 2021 season?
I can't remember off the top of my head. No.
Matt Stafford, who had a horrendous 2022 season, but he's still a tier ahead of Dak, right? Like,
Yeah.
they're not they're not all created equal. And I think you're right. Like, I think you have to look at the body of work a little bit. And that's why, like, Deshaun Watson is in tier 3, right? Deshaun Watson did not play well in 2022, right? There's a million different reasons. But I know for the most part, his career, he's one of the best passers in the league, right? He led the NFL in passer rating in 2020. Like, he's a really good quarterback, had a little bit of a down year. Even Russell Wilson, like, we've seen Russell be a really good quarterback for a long time, had a bad year. I'm not willing to say that he's trash. It's hilarious to me that for Dak, who by his accounts had a down season, and now you're hearing people on big platforms say, oh, he can't win in the playoffs, when the fact that he literally almost had a flawless game against Tampa Bay in terms of like passer rating, touchdowns, and did win a road playoff game, but he's not good enough to win in the playoffs. Like, we completely forgot what happened in that game.
By the same logic that's applied to Dak's overall career, the idea that the previous season is that all that matters, right? Tom Brady is one of the worst playoff quarterbacks in the history of NFL. And, Dak basically ran him out of the league, if you want to go there. So, it's just funny how selective some of these folks can be in their criteria for what to tier. Like, it's going to be very nuanced. Well, this person had a bad year. No. But for Dak, it's like, oh, he had X amount of interceptions last year, so he's got to be, in tier 4.
I mean, and then we could get to the Daniel Jones stuff, right? Like, having Daniel Jones above Dak is just dumb, right? Because Daniel Jones, look at the playoff stuff, right? If you want to dismiss your good games and the only thing that matters are your bad games in the playoffs, he had 135 yards passing, was sacked 5 times, had 2 fumbles, and threw an interception, and got absolutely killed by Philadelphia, right? But no, that doesn't matter because you went 9-8 one year and you had 15 passing touchdowns, which was the most in his career. So that's obviously a tier 3 quarterback, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's inconsistent criteria. It's no singular methodology for ranking these guys. It's all emotional. It's all just like,
and it's all I mean, listen, we're in the content creation business, and it's all about getting clicks, right? And it's what I kind of hate about it. It's all what's going to drive traffic and drive discussion, and putting Dak in tier 2 or tier 3 isn't going to get people excited. But you get him in tier 4 behind Daniel Jones. That's what's going to get people clicking on your website. It's garbage, for the lack of a better term.
I mean, 3 months from now, these same people are going to be tweeting something. Dak will have one good game, and they'll be tweeting something like Dak playing at an MVP level. Dak, for all pro. There's no consistency.
The same way, like with the Daniel Jones, right? Daniel Jones has 2 bad games to start the year off. Hey, should the Giants
move on? Time to move on for Daniel Jones. Like, it's maddening, the inconsistency and the inconsistency also within the ranking themselves, or just the inconsistency on how some of these people continually go back and forth about how they feel about some of these players.
For me, I think obviously the top 3: Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, and then Lamar, Herbert, and I'm good. If you want to put Lawrence in there because of potential, I'm fine with that. But I think Jalen Hurts had a really, really good season last year. But Dak has had in 2021, remember, he threw the most touchdowns in Dallas Cowboys history, 37 in 16 games, right? Like, put them in the same tier. Let's wait and see how this season goes. But to put somebody like Tua or Justin Fields or Daniel Jones over him, in their own separate tier is it's ludicrous to me. I think even the biggest Dak haters would say that that's wild.
It's just, erasing all the great, incredible stuff he's done throughout his career because he threw some interceptions while trying to win. I mean, he still got his team to a round deeper in the playoffs than he did the previous year. Exactly. And when you guys were complaining that he couldn't win a playoff game. All right. Exactly. So, I mean, you can move the goalpost all you want to put in whatever tier you want, but it's like, it's just making yourself look bad when you put Dak Prescott behind Daniel Jones as who's a better quarterback. I mean, guys, like,
at some point, guys, we got to watch football. Like, if you're going to be doing these rankings, it's important to actually watch the games, right?
At some point, the box scores plus PFF grades is not enough to kind of get a clear picture of what's going on. So,
All right. Yeah, enough with those rankings. This is just ludicrous, and it makes my blood boil. Let's talk about Dak kind of going into this year and what we expect next. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's so easy to create a new job post. All you have to do, post your job, and then add the purple hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, where we are talking about Dak Prescott going into the 2023 season. Lynn, I want to know, what do you expect from Dak this year? Because I think we can all agree last year was not Dak's best statistical season, although he played well in the one playoff game. He did play well in some of the big games down the stretch, including the game against Philadelphia. But overall, what are you expecting from him this year?
I mean, I'm expecting something similar than what we've seen for, the vast majority of his career. I mean, to me, he is a, 67% completion percentage guy who's probably going to end up with, 3,500 plus yards passing, and a lot of the kind of nuance in what we're looking for statistically is yards per attempt, and where that it usually falls is kind of a big indicator on what kind of season he's having. But he usually, look, one of the things we just talked about is his interception rate is usually under 2%. And last year it was at 3.8%.
Yeah, I think
to me,
last year he was like in the top 10 all time in best touchdown to interception ratio.
So to me, that's why when you look at that, you try to tell me which one is the outlier. I'm going to tell you the one where he almost doubled his normal career interception rate. And I think that, now that look, it's pretty clear what the Cowboys feel like what the problem was. They went out and traded for Brandon Cooks. They wanted to make sure that Michael Gallup is getting healthy. They're hoping for Jalen Tolbert to kind of develop. They've got some young guys that they've gotten there. So they've basically increased the amount of talent in the pass catcher room in several different ways. And really, even you could probably suggest, maybe not early on, but if some of these tight ends hit, if Schoonmaker shows up, you're going to get a more athletic tight end there. So he's just being provided more weapons on the outside, and that what's that going to hopefully produce for him? It's going to produce more open football players, not tight windows that he's having to throw into. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that Dak was near the top, if not in the top, at the top of tight window throws.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he had to make the throws.
Which, if you look back at like Dak early in his career, he wasn't somebody that liked to throw into tight windows anyways, right? Like we have always talked about, what kind of receiver meshes well with Dak. And this is why Amari Cooper fit so well, right? Is because Amari got open and he created a lot of separation, which ended up making some easy throws for Dak. Him throwing into tight windows to guys that he doesn't necessarily trust, like Noah Brown or Dennis Houston or Semi Fehoko, or you name the guy, has never really been his strength.
Yeah, and I think he kind of paid the price for it last year, and you see why he throws to people he trusts at different points, right? So I tend to think that obviously that he'll go back to something closer to that, and then with receiver core, the ceiling may be higher than we even have ever anticipated before. There's a chance that he produces numbers better than 2019, 2021.
2019 and 2021 were his two best statistical seasons. Yeah.
So I think that it's possible that he reaches those heights and exceeds them because of what he has at the receiver position versus what he's had previously. So I expect a similar season to those sort of top end seasons that he had. If he can remain healthy, that he's got a team around him that's, I think, offensive team specifically around him that's on par with what those years were, and we've seen him produce at those levels before, and I don't think he's become a worse quarterback. I think, he dealt with some injuries at different points last year. He dealt with some lack of talent at the outside wide receiver position. Hopefully he doesn't have to deal with those two issues this year, and he gets something back to closer to what we expect in the 2021-2019 kind of seasons.
I think the best possible outcome for Dak, if he doesn't have to feel pressed all that often. And you mentioned it, like there was a lot of times last year where it felt like he was trying to be Superman, right? He was going to try to make every contested throw and put the ball on the money to a receiver that he didn't necessarily trust because he had to, right? And I'm hoping, and we'll talk about this in a second, I'm hoping with his fit with McCarthy, he gives him more layup throws. There's just fewer of these 3rd and 11s, 3rd and 12s where, and listen, if you go back and look at Dak's interceptions, a lot of them were when it's 3rd and 10 plus, and he's just trying to drive the ball beyond the sticks to get a first down, right? Yeah. And maybe now, if he really trusts his defense and he trusts his playmakers, it's like, hey, it's okay to throw the ball to Tony Pollard 3, 4, 5 yards behind the sticks because he might make a play after the catch. And if he doesn't, we'll punt and we'll rely on our defense. I think that's probably I don't want to say conservative, but maybe a little bit smarter Dak would just, I think it would elevate the entire offense. And the entire team.
I think part of what you're saying too is that, McCarthy is, I think, going to provide Dak with better solutions if he can't go down the field. Right. Because I think that has been the issue at times is that Dak didn't have an out necessarily all the time.
Well, because it wasn't Zeke on a 2-yard check down, right? He just was never going to get that, 9 yards that you need. Right.
Yeah. And I also think that, the short passing game is just going to be improved because I think Mike McCarthy is probably better at it. That's just part of the West Coast offense. Yeah. That's not necessarily a huge part of the Coryell offense. I mean, they obviously have short routes in the
but their focus is down the middle of the field, 15, 20, 30 yards, right?
Yeah, and I think that'll still be a huge thing. I think that they're still going to continue to attack down the field. I just think that McCarthy is going to come up with better solutions for Dak when things go wrong, or trying to get Dak going in the short passing game to kind of get him into the rhythm, because that has been another thing too. It seems like at times the opening script of the game really seemed to work against kind of getting Dak into rhythm and into the game. So I'm hoping that there's some improvements there with Schottenheimer and McCarthy and just focusing on getting those 15 plays to be something that helps Dak get into rhythm, as opposed to just being a strategic set of plays to find out exactly how they counter them. It's more important that Dak gets into a rhythm in the game than kind of probing the defense in the way that they've been trying to do.
Yeah, let's expand on that. I want to talk more about Dak Prescott's fit with not only Mike McCarthy, but also with Brian Schottenheimer. Yeah. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs make you look good. Bird Dogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the leg and the thigh to give you a truly sculpted look. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they just fit way better. They fit better than regular shorts that are made of the stiff, restricting cotton. Bird Dogs have fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khakis, but they stretch so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Bird Dog uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. We absolutely love our Bird Dog shorts. I wear mine to the golf course all the time. I wear them around the house. They're the most comfortable shorts that I own. Now you can own them as well. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL or enter promo code LockedOnNFL for a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. That is birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL or use promo code LockedOnNFL for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. Every dayers. Landon and I will be back on Tuesday to continue some more of these hot button debates regarding the Dallas Cowboys. So make sure you tune in for that. Landon, I want to talk about Dak's fit with McCarthy, but kind of right before we do that, I was reading an article today from the 33rd team by Mike Martz, the former head coach of the St. Louis Rams. And he was talking about his favorite offensive coordinator hires this year. And at number 1 was Brian Schottenheimer, because he thinks that fit with Dak is going to be great to help him kind of play within himself, get him in rhythm. I just want your thoughts on the trio right here between Dak Prescott, Mike McCarthy, and Brian Schottenheimer.
I think the thing that's interesting to me is that they may, this may be optimistic, fan speak, who knows, but I think that there is an opportunity that these three could really complement each other well, because I do think that, look, Schottenheimer learned something from the Russell Wilson situation. I think he must have, because I think part of what they wanted to do in Seattle was, it was coming down from on high from Pete, right? They wanted to run the football. They wanted to control the clock. They wanted to win with defense in a lot of ways. I think that Schottenheimer is, he's not going to be the play caller, but where he will help is kind of making sure that the offense is designed in a way to keep Dak, in the game, to keep Dak occupied. I think, look, everyone previous to this, except for Mike McCarthy, was all Coryell offensive coordinators, right? We talk about Kellen Moore coming in from Scott Linehan, and obviously learning even a little bit more of that previous the stops in Boise State, and Detroit with Linehan. And those are all, the thing about Coryell offenses is it's about attacking down the field. It's about attacking down the field. You think about the bang eights, you think about all the passing that gets done in combination with the run game for the classic kind of 90s Cowboys games. And those were the kind of the things that you're seeing. I think where Schottenheimer and McCarthy will help is bringing some more West Coast mindset to the Coryell playbook. The Coryell playbook will remain. I think the difference will be getting Dak in the headspace of, hey, boom, boom. And if you don't see it, throw it to the outlet, guy. Don't. Well, there were times when it felt like Dak was going all the way through progressions and then all the way back through progressions to try to find the deep route only. And there are times when it's okay to go through your progressions and see Tony Pollard out in the flat by himself, with no one 5 yards around him. And that's a good play. Getting him the ball for 8 yards on first down, that's a good play, So I think that's the thing
with Dak that I don't think people appreciate enough, is that it feels like when he's in rhythm and he's hot and he's feeling it, he's almost unstoppable. It's almost like you get his confidence up a little bit, and we saw it in the Tampa Bay game. This is a perfect example. The first 2 drives of that game were horrendous. They couldn't even get a yard. But as soon as they got that first down, they were off. They scored 5 touchdowns from that point on.
It's crazy to watch. It's crazy to watch the Cowboys the last 2 years, because that's what it is. And that's why it's nuts when we hear all these conversations about Dak being outside of like the top 5 or 6 quarterbacks, because when Dak is on, Dak is like as good as almost any quarterback in the league. And the numbers bear that out. So the question is, how do we get Dak into that comfort zone quicker and get him into that? And I think that part of it is helping Dak get out of his own way. Like what I just described is Dak going back and forth through his progressions twice. Most quarterbacks are lucky to get through their progressions once, but let me present a scenario, right? If Dak gets all the way through his progressions left to right once, finds no one open, goes right to left through his progressions, finds one guy who's not very open, throws it down the field, and it gets intercepted. Or QBX goes through halfway through one progression, finds one guy and gets the ball, who happens to be able to get the ball to him, who completed the more difficult task at quarterback. Yeah. And I think that's what we're seeing, is that Dak was operating at high levels of quarterbacking to even get, decent statistics. The things he was having to do to kind of continue to move the ball at different points was ridiculous. And we talked about hitting the easy button for him. This is something we've talked about for years with him. It felt like there were times when it happened last year, but it still feels like that's where the improvement can come with McCarthy, right? Is that, hey, Dak, you went through your progressions. It's not happening. Let's find a safe place to get to where we're getting positive yards, where you're completing a pass and keeping in rhythm, but we're also not putting the ball at high risk, because we don't need to, because we don't have to at this point.
Dak feels like to me one of these players in basketball, like one of these awesome shooters where sometimes you just need to see the ball go through the hoop once and then you're in rhythm, right? Like
Yeah.
get him a layup or giving him a free throw and all of a sudden you're off. And I think Dak is a rookie. I mean, listen, I'm gonna give Jason Garrett some credit here. I don't really ever do that. I think as a rookie, they made things really easy. Here's one
Yeah.
read, here's your underneath read. If it's not there, run, right? And I actually think the running part of it or the rushing part of it helped him kind of get into a rhythm. But now that he's kind of past that phase of his career and he's developed into more of a pocket passer, I don't think the Cowboys have done a good enough job of giving him layup throws early in games, early on downs, just to get him going a little bit. Because again, we mentioned this when he's in rhythm, he's nearly impossible to stop because he can scan the whole field. Then he's got the accuracy and the timing and the anticipation. And he can just be deadly that way.
We need to give Dak better late in the snap options. Yeah, because again, it's a blessing and a curse that he's so good at getting through his progressions. He understands the offense so well that he knows,
Yeah.
hey, he's skipping over reads because he knows where to get to. That's great, but if the play isn't working, if the receivers aren't able to get open, Dak has got to have an option that doesn't include just continually trying to go through the progressions and hope that those guys get open. He needs an option underneath to dump the ball off. He needs a runway to run through and slide to get 4 yards. And I think he needs to avail himself of more of those options. And I think a trust in the skill set of the wide receivers
That'll help.
will allow that, because then he can say, you know what? I can take the 5 yards here. Cooks is gonna beat this guy the next play. I'll take the short gain here, and then we'll keep it going in the next down.
If you want an example of what we're kind of talking about, the Cowboys actually had three of these games last year with Dak. The Minnesota game, they got hot early, and Dak's confidence was at an all-time high. The Philadelphia game on Christmas Eve, after the first 2 drives of the game where they kind of sputtered and they had the pick 6, Dak was on fire the rest of that game. And then the Tampa Bay game is the absolute perfect example. Didn't gain a yard in the first 2 possessions. They get that first down on possession 3, and then they're off, right? So that's what Mike McCarthy and Brian Schottenheimer are going to try to do for Dak this year, and I can't wait to see how it all plays out. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen of the day. Again, everydayers will be back tomorrow, continuing to talk about some of the biggest Cowboy topics. We are free and available on all platforms, but go check our show out on YouTube as well. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. We'll see you guys next time.